Okay guys, welcome back. We're in Snap, and we're just going to start getting set up for our 2D platformer. So the first thing we're going to do is design our level. Now the easiest way to make a big level that has enough room to explore and jump around and have some fun on is going to start with just making our stage size bigger. Now of course there are other solutions like coding actual scrolling, but that doesn't work great in Snap and can produce a lot of lag. We can also do things that are like scene changes where when you reach one side of the screen, it loads the next screen, which is kind of complicated and time consuming. So we're going to start with just one big screen, one big stage, and if you get really far and you want to do more, we can look into that. So how do we make our stage bigger? We've gone over this briefly before, but let's take a closer look now. So as I'm trying to figure out the best stage size to work with here, I'll want something that works for the monitor that I'm working on, is one thing to consider. Now, your screen size might be just a little bit different than mine. Our laptops aren't identical, but I'll try to find something close and you can make adjustments as you need it. Now, I'll demonstrate why this is kind of important. So first off, to change our stage size, we go up here and we click on this little gear icon. Then just a few options down, we see stage size. Click on that. Our default width is 480 and our height is 360. Now, if we go way outside of these bounds, like, I don't know, let's say 5,000 by 3,000. Let's see what happens. So you can see this is kind of breaking my interface. I can't even click on my menus over here anymore. And now my screen is just all white as I've tried to resize it. So making your stage really big is going to actually make it impossible to get anything done. So let's just leave that alone and try it again, something a little more reasonable. Now, based on what I know about the size of my screen, I'm going to guess that something like 1,000 pixels wide by 550 pixels high might be okay for us. Let's see. Alright, I think I like this. I still have access to all of my interfaces. I can still see my sprites and my stage down here. I can still see my costumes and scripts over here, and I can still access all of my blocks on the left. And if this is still taking up too much space, I can resize the way that this looks while I'm working on it. It's still going to be the same size in terms of when we play it full screen, what it looks like. But while we're working on it, we can make it appear smaller so we have more room to work with our tools. So for me, 1,000 wide by 550 high is really nice. I recommend trying that same size out yourself. If it feels a little weird, or you want to see if you can push it a little bigger, or you feel like you need to make it a little bit smaller, tweak it. But try starting around there and see how it works for you. Now we're going to go down our rubric and start adding things to our stage that we know we need in the game. Now, before you go and actually start doing this yourself, I recommend that you do watch the next video. The next video isn't mine, it's one of those extra credits videos, and it talks about level design in a really interesting way, and I think you should give that a look before you start designing your own level. But I'm going to show you the process of starting to just roughly design your level right now. Another thing you should be remembering right here is the idea of failing faster. If you make little mistakes, you want to make them early, and you want to make them easily, without wasting too much time. So before we start designing the perfect character or a really cool enemy, or deciding exactly what our environment looks like, we're just going to add in a bunch of placeholder assets as we design our level. So for instance, I've already got one sprite right here, and this sprite, I'm just going to rename Player. The sprite that I already have in my scene, I'm going to use as my player sprite. And like if this little triangle shape doesn't work for me because it looks nothing like my character is going to, so if I wanted to change this to look just a little more representative of my player, I could do something like go to Costumes and then go to Paint New Costume. And let's say I want to make this like just a little representation of Mario. Maybe I'll go and I'll make a little red rectangle and a little circular head, and this is not perfect. And I mean, if I'm getting real fancy right now, and I mean, this honestly is already like way fancier than we need to be. I can give it a red hat or blue legs and brown shoes. And honestly, this is like already way fancier than you need to be. It doesn't need to look like this. You can use just a single rectangle. So here is my new little player character. And honestly, I probably made this a little too big. So I'm going to go edit this costume and I'm going to hit shrink a few times, because I want my character to be nice and small so that the stage feels bigger in comparison to him, giving him more room to explore. I might shrink him down yet a little bit more. And notice this shrinking is making him look blurry and even worse than his simplistic beginnings already made him look. But that's okay. This is probably not going to be my final character sprite. It's just good enough to get me started. I know what it is, I can move it where I want it, and eventually I'll add some code to it to make it start moving around. But right now, I'm just getting the sprite in the stage. Now, if we keep working our way down our rubric, we see a lot of things about the player character that need to be done, but right now we're just focusing on getting the player character sprite in. So let's look at the next thing that's mentioned in sprites. We need at least 2 scenery sprites. When I say scenery, we're talking about something like a platform to jump on. So let's create some ground sprites. And again, we're going to keep this very simple. So if you click here, you'll create a new sprite that looks like one of these, well, they call them turtles. They just look like arrows, really. But if we click on the paintbrush, we'll create a new sprite and get to choose what it looks like. So for right now, I'll just make my grounds some green rectangles. So I'll pick the filled rectangle block right here, pick a green color, and then make just one platform to start with. And I'm going to move this so that it's underneath my player's feet. So I'm going to have my player start right down here in the bottom left. Now there's a couple ways I could go about creating more platforms. If this platform looks really good and I want more of it, I can control click on it and simply duplicate it. So by simply duplicating or cloning these, you can very easily start to build your level. Now if you want some variety, and I do, I'm going to create another new sprite for my ground. And if you want a little consistency, again, we're probably going to cover a lot of this up in the end, but you can still take your eyedropper tool and select the same green that you were using before, and I'm going to make a block that is narrower and taller. And again, I can control click and duplicate this. And you can see the beginnings of a level starting to be formed here. Now, we also need some things in our game like a power-up and a way to end the game, and a way to lose the game. So I've decided that I'm going to put a door out of this level in the top right, and I'm going to put a power-up of sorts, being a key that opens that door, in the top left. This is going to encourage the player to explore most of the available space, and maybe if they fall down they'll land here and need to do a little backtracking or something like that. So to keep things simple, I'll just duplicate that and put it up here for my doorway exit, and I will duplicate another one of those and put it up here for my key power up. Now we also need to make sure that there's actually a way that our player can get to both of these locations, and a lot of that will depend on how high you code them to be able to jump and things like that. But I'm going to add in just a few more platforms to make sure that this is actually something that can be done, that you can platform to these locations. Alright, a lot of this is going to depend on how my jump is programmed, but for now I think that's okay. I can always adjust this later if I need to. Let's keep going down and looking at what else we need to have in here. It says that we need a stationary enemy and a moving enemy. And you know what? I've decided I need a little more risk in my game. I'm going to make this a little bit trickier, and I'm going to leave a little bit more of a gap here in the middle. And underneath this gap, there's going to be some spikes. And as usual, I'm not going to worry about making these look fantastic. I'm just going to use my line tool and pick a color that's vaguely metallic, and I'm going to make some spikes. If I want to get real fancy, I could take my bucket fill and fill these in, but even this is more effort than we need for a placeholder. So we're going to hit OK, and I'm going to put some spikes down here. And if I feel like I need those to go on a little bit further, I don't need to draw them again. I can just duplicate, and I can reuse that asset to put some spikes right there. If I want to add risk anywhere else in my game, I can duplicate this, and I can make missing this jump right here a little bit riskier by putting some spikes down. Alright, now our game has some stakes. There's a way that things could go wrong, or at least in theory. I mean, right now our character doesn't move and our spikes don't do damage and we don't have a health bar, but we're just laying out the groundwork for our level design. So that's my stationary enemy, Spikes, and even though I just drew one sprite, I've got it placed in 3 different locations using 4 different sprites. You can see how you can take one asset and really get some good use out of it. Now we're also going to need a moving enemy, and again today, this enemy is not going to move. But I'm just going to create something as a placeholder for it. let's say I want this to feel like a Goomba from Mario. So I'm going to give this just kind of a brown ovalish head, and I'll get a slightly more yellowish color to give it, as my daughter would say, yellow pants. That's how she sees Goombas, as having yellow pants. And, you know, I could give this eyes and feet, but I'm probably not going to use this as my final enemy, so I'm not going to worry about making it look any better than this. This is fine. I could just use a brown circle. That would be enough. So this is my Goomba placeholder. If it seems a little big, I might again control-click on it, edit, and then just spam my shrink button here, because I do want him to be something that can be jumped over and avoided. So maybe I'm going to put this guy right up here just to make it a little bit trickier once we get up there. As I'm looking at my level and thinking about how high I want my character to be able to jump, I know he can make it up here. I'm pretty sure he can make it across this gap, but I'm not sure how he would be able to jump this high. I don't want him to be able to jump quite that high. And he might have a hard time getting under here, so maybe getting under this and up to there without hitting these spikes, it might be almost impossible, so maybe I want to do something like put these spikes down here. This should be more doable. He can jump over these, jump up here, and the more I look at it, you know, I probably need a way for him to reach the key up here still. There's no way he can make this jump. So let's duplicate this platform and put one in between. I think this is pretty doable. So we've got some scenery sprites, we've got a player character, we've got a moving enemy and a stationary enemy. Now it also says that we are going to need a health bar. And the health bar, we're going to save until later. We're going to create the sprites for the health bar in its own lesson just a little bit later on. Now remember that we do need a power-up in the game and a way for the game to end. My ending for the game is going to be getting through a door over here. So making a door really couldn't be simpler. I'm going to go ahead and find a brown color, create a rectangle, and if I want to get real cute, I'm going to take a yellow color and a circle tool. Boom! Best door ever. It's perfection. Let's put it right about there. That size probably isn't perfect, but I don't care. It's a placeholder. Right now, I just want it there. Later, we'll make it function, and after it's functioning, we might even take the time to make it look good, but this is all that we need for today. And for our power-up, I said I'm going to put a key up here in the top left. So I'm going to paint myself a little golden key. Even just a yellow rectangle would be enough here, but just to help you visualize it, there, I've made it something that looks kind of like a key. All right, player character, scenery sprites, stationary enemy, moving enemy, a way to exit the level, and a power-up. Again, even this player character, this is real cute. You don't need to do this. You can make it just a red rectangle or a blue rectangle, whatever you want. Something like that is fine for getting started. So this is really all that you need to do for your level design today. It could be a good idea also to go and start naming some of these things. Like instead of Sprite 15, it could be helpful in the long run if Sprite 15 is instead named something like Enemy or Enemy 1, and Sprite 18, it'll probably make my life a whole lot easier if I just name this key. Sprite 17, let's go ahead and name it door. If you were being thorough, I would recommend going through and calling sprites, 11 through 14, spike 1, 2, 3, and 4, stuff like that. It may help you later on as you're coding, or even just as you're moving things around, to know what's where by having the names match up with the imagery. But once you're happy with it, make sure that you're logged in, that you go to this little piece of paper, and you hit Save As. First, let's give it a name. I'm going to call this, for mine, since I've done a million of these before, I'm going to call this my new platformer. And for my sake, just to make sure it shows up at the top of my list, since we're going to be working on this a little bit, I'm going to put a 0, 0 in front of it. That should make sure it shows up at the top. First, I'm going to hit Save, and then what you need to do is make sure that you go back to that Save As, you select it, you hit Share, hit Yes, and then you should see this long link pop up here. Once you see that long link, you can close your save window, copy this, go to Schoology, paste it into the comments so that we can all see how our levels are coming along. So this week, get your design document done in Schoology, and then get your level design finished and share that with me in the comments. All right, guys, until next time, good luck and have fun.